The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline.
Welcome back, everybody. Existential Crisis Hotline, and I'm Cameron Cope. And tonight I am going to challenge the way you think about reality. The first thing I want you to consider is that, first of all, look at your life and your experience of your life, and especially your experience right now. You may be noticing when you look around at world events like politics, all the stuff that's going on, the global conversation around AI, artificial intelligence. You might have noticed that a lot of people, on one hand, are very excited about AI. On the other hand, many people have a lot of anxiety about it. There's all of the discussion around, will AI take away everybody's jobs? Will it replace us? Maybe it'll make our lives better. Maybe it'll make it so we don't have to work. But even if you believe that, if you look within for a moment, you might notice that there's a little bit of doubt, right? Okay, maybe this technology could be really cool. Maybe it could enhance our lives, right? But I think for most people, if you're being honest with yourself about just what you've experienced in your life, a lot of things have happened that you're not satisfied with, you're not happy with. Now, I don't know if everybody looks at things this way. Some people might go through life blissfully unaware of anything negative whatsoever. So I'm not really speaking to those people. If you're blissfully unaware and everything's fine and you have no reason to see why anything should change in your life or in the world, then this live stream is probably not for you at the moment. So you can come back when you change your mind about that. Okay, so for everybody else who's still here, if you look back at your life, I'm sure you see lots of points where you're like, man, that was messed up. Or I didn't like that. Or I wish things could have been different. Look around at politics. Look around at world events. Same thing, right? Sure, there are some good things that happen, but there's also a lot of things where it's like, it's a little difficult for me to relate to people who in 2020, let's say, with the whole COVID thing, that was the first time they saw that something seemed to be not right in the world. And some people didn't buy into it. They were like, I don't believe, there's really a pandemic, but they tended to fall on the side of, I think this is all something the government's doing to control everybody. Other people believed that it was happening or accepted that it was happening, and they just thought it was this really terrible pandemic that was happening. Either way, weird shit's happening in the world. Like when I was in high school, 9/11 happened. And even shortly before that, there was this whole .com. Well, actually, it was not the .com thing specifically. It was what do they call it? Y2K, right? The world was going to end because the computers couldn't handle the switchover from, the year 1999 going to 2000, because it was going to reset all the clocks to 00, and everything was going to blow up and break. And although it didn't seem to actually cause any real problem, there was this anxiety that was within everybody, right? So regardless of what's really happening or not, what I've noticed is the anxiety levels within people is going up, 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 up. The uncertainty levels about what's really going on is going up, up, up. And it's exacerbated, or it's made worse by the fact that now we have this weird environment online where people are incentivized to share information, whether it's true or not, just to get a reaction from people that will make them comment, make them share, make them react, just so that that person can make a living or make money from the social media company that they're posting on. And then you add to that all the stuff happening with AI, and specifically the ability now to make things that aren't real, that never really happened. And yeah, that was always the case, right? You know, you have movie companies and the news, they could perhaps do that. But now pretty much anybody can do it at the push of a button. So it kind of muddies the water even more. In a time where you would think having all this technology, this communication technology, we would be more connected with each other. We could get to the bottom of what's really going on more easily. But if you are online a lot, you notice it's kind of the opposite. No matter what happens, no matter what event happens, there's immediately lots of people questioning whether it really happened or whether it happened the way we're told it happened. It's just confusion. So that also in itself is creating a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in people. And, you can think about, for example, like the Ukraine war was a good example where you have all these different sides questioning why it's happening, whether it's really happening, what's the motives, which side should you trust, which side should you be on. The Iran war was an even more recent example of that. And you'll notice that these things seem to be like happening more often, these really major things that put everybody into sort of a confusion. And again, you have the people who perhaps aren't paying attention to that at all. They're just getting up, going to work, coming home. I guess they're watching Netflix, so they're just like not paying attention to what's happening in the world. But even those people are starting to feel anxiety in the form of, man, the prices of things are going up. And my electric bill is going up. And they're also impulsed by a lot of things online too. Maybe not literally they're on X where they're seeing all these different opinions and so forth. But you've got things like Tinder, where the younger generations are on dating apps trying to connect with other people, but not really forming a real connection. And then you have the manipulation of the algorithms within the apps, the starting point of which is to keep you on the app. I mean, think about it. If you're Tinder, and I'm just choosing them as an example, do you really want people to immediately go on Tinder, find a long-term relationship, and then never need the app again? If everybody did that, if it really worked, nobody would need to use the platform. So there's an incentive there to run the algorithm in a way where it doesn't actually solve your problem. And it seems to be like that with most things, isn't it? Most things are not there to actually solve a problem for you. They're there to get you more engaged with doing that thing. Not so you solve the problem, but so you just keep coming back for more. And social media is a perfect example of this. And that's where you get things like rage bait, where people perhaps deliberately, maybe unconsciously, twist the meaning of things, misrepresent things, just so people will be like, what the hell, this can't be true. And it's like they're literally just making shit up. And you're reacting to it, and that's what they wanted because it gives them engagement. So it's ironic because we have all of this communication technology, and yet we're abusing each other with it. We have all of this technology where we could, if we wanted to, if the will was there and the intention was there, we could make sure everybody has what they need. And yet, instead, it's being used to manipulate and abuse everybody. And then you have things like the war in Iran, for example, where the side effects of that, one side effect anyways, when they shut down the shipping, then, for example, fertilizer doesn't go to Africa. And the effects of that might be felt 5, 10, 15 years from now even. What kind of anxiety is that going to create in people who are affected by that directly? It might even have a much bigger effect than just that alone. That's just one example. That seems pretty obvious, right? So you have all these things that have happened in your life that have made you question, like, why are things the way they are? Could they be different? Could they be better? Right? For myself, I started that process very consciously back when I was in college. And I've told the story about what led me to that point in other streams and other places. But my point is, at a certain point, I started asking myself, like, okay, what's going on here? And I remember one of the things that kind of caught my attention, let's say, was just this thought that I had, or it was an observation, I guess, of realizing, I'm experiencing reality as if I'm back here and I'm seeing things in front of me. Okay, now that probably sounds really obvious when you think about it. But I remember at the time just being like, okay, it's actually kind of weird. Like, reality could be set up differently, I suppose. I don't know what it would look like, but it seems kind of arbitrary, actually. Like, why is it that way? Isn't that strange? Isn't it weird that you're like back here and you're seeing things in front of you? That's strange. It might be, and it might not seem strange if you never really think about it or you don't just consider it for a moment. And it might not seem strange to everybody. I don't know. But for me, it was like, yeah, it's kind of weird. Like we take it for granted, and yet if you think about it for a moment, why is it like that? Isn't that weird? And I would bring it up with people, and I noticed that no one ever really thought about it before. I'm not saying no one ever in history thought about it, but I just mean people on average that I would talk to never thought about it, or if I brought it up, they were like, yeah, oh well, that's weird, but whatever. Like, they didn't care. Okay. But they got me thinking at that time, like, what is going on there? Why is that the case? Why am I even experiencing reality at all? Why am I even having an experience? That's weird. And why am I having an individual experience? And I'm assuming other people are also having an individual experience, right? I mean, that's what we call life, isn't it? We take that for granted. And I'm not saying anything new. I'm not saying anything no one's ever, I don't know if you've ever considered it before, but it's not like no one's unaware of it. And yet at the same time, we don't really consider it that often. And you say, well, we got bigger, more important things to do. I got to go to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. Okay, I understand. But that's simply because that's the reality you find yourself in, right? We could talk about why is reality in a way, like why is your experience of it, why is the world structured in a way where you have to go to work to survive? You can say, well, if nobody worked, there wouldn't be food, nothing would get transported, there wouldn't be electricity, and I understand that. But all of that existed before you even started experiencing yourself. Like, you kind of just like wake up one day and you're in all of this, okay? And the reason why it exists like it does, the reality that you wake up into, the external reality that you experience, the reason why it's like that is because all the people who were already here were going to work, doing those things, and that led to this, which led to that, which created that, right? It's like it didn't already exist automatically. It was created that way, right? Day by day, it's being created around you. So even right now, you are sitting listening to me, there's things going on outside of your awareness, your conscious awareness, that is continuing that system and creating and building and all that external reality that now you're subject to, right? If, for example, it's kind of a extreme example, but if you woke up one morning and suddenly a dictator had taken power of the government where you live, whether it's the country or the state or the province or whatever, and declared that no one is allowed to leave their home during certain hours or they're going to get shot, something like that, what would you couldn't really do anything about that. Like, it's now you're just subject to that, right? Like, that's your reality now. Now, some people might try to resist and so forth, but the fact is you can't just say, no, that's not the reality I want. and blink your eyes and suddenly it's a different thing, right? In other words, are you really in control of the reality you experience? Or are you mostly just subject to it, right? And then you have people debating about free will. Do we have free will? Do we not have free will? And it's such a silly conversation because obviously you're in a world where you don't control most of it. Now, can you make decisions in the context of your individual life? Yes, you're presented with choices. You could stand up right now, or you could not stand up. You can make that choice, right? Now, if you didn't have any legs, your choices would be limited, and you would be subject to whatever condition your physical body's in. So, like, do you really have free will? Like, do you have free will from the perspective of you can do anything you want? You can experience any reality you want. You're completely, totally free to choose any reality you want. And of course, you have people who believe that. Like, they convince themselves that that is true. But that's against the evidence that you can observe in your reality. And you have to be honest with yourself, because people will say, oh no, you don't understand. One time, I was driving around and there was no parking spots, and I realized I create my reality, and I just knew I was going to find a parking spot. And you wouldn't believe it. I drove around again, and there was a parking spot right there at the front. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Maybe you really did manifest that. But at the same time, now manifest a completely, totally different reality. Like your dream reality manifested right now. And you say, well, it takes time and belief and all these. It's like, right. So then you're still subject to a lot of stuff, right? So I want to get in a little bit anyways into what's going on there. Why can't you just manifest any reality you want? And that doesn't mean I'm saying ultimately you can't, but it's not going to be like an instantaneous thing. If somebody's telling you you can just learn this technique and then you can create any reality you want for yourself, individually, then you have to understand whatever reality you create in that context, like it's just something internally you do that then your reality changes. That's an illusion. That's not real. And it's so easy to convince yourself that it's happening. But how easy is it to fool people? How easy is it for you to be fooled into believing in something that's not real? I mean, every night you go to sleep and you dream and you don't realize you're dreaming until after you wake up. So you can convince yourself or be convinced that something real is happening that's not really happening. So now that's kind of the big picture, right? And I mean, obviously some people have very extreme experiences of like really questioning reality and like everything in their life is falling apart and they're like, why is this happening? Some people maybe experience that in a very mild way. There's like a range of experience of that. But there's not a single individual in reality who can make everything happen that they want without any limitation whatsoever. And there's a reason for that, right? And it's the reason is something that I won't say that nobody realizes that, but I will say that most people who are really at some level unhappy with their reality don't realize this point, that reality doesn't only exist for you. You're not the only thing that exists in reality. And again, that seems really obvious when I say it out loud, but do you really understand that at a really, really, really deep level? That reality doesn't exist only for you. Because I would say virtually all of us act as if it does. We all have our own goals, our own desires, our own dreams, our own wants, and we're constantly trying to fulfill them. And we know, whether we admit it or not, we know the only way to fulfill them is through something in the external world. Now, you do have religions and spirituality and all these kind of things that say, no, you can just be pure bliss, happiness, completely independent of any external thing. like I said, it's very easy to convince yourself of something that's not real. Because let me give you a scenario. Let's say you could put on a virtual reality headset. And when you're in this virtual reality, you can experience anything you want and it feels totally real. All right? But no one's feeding your physical body. Eventually, your body will start to deteriorate. And then eventually, there will be some kind of interruption in this virtual reality wonderful experience you're having. Like, maybe you'll start to notice, like, oh, I'm not feeling well. And, like, you're feeling it in the virtual reality, like your stomach's hurting or you're feeling weak and fatigued or whatever it is. Or maybe you just die and you're, like, just dead. Like, it just ends, right? So, for somebody who's totally lost in the delusion of, like, no, nothing is real and I can create my own reality, some people might be so far gone within that there's, like, no turning that person around. There may be nothing I can say to that person that's going to get them to realize that that's not real. But obviously, they do exist in physical reality, and they do have needs that have to be fulfilled by the external reality, like eating. Like, you can't just not go to the bathroom for a month. Like, you'll get sick and die, right? So there are physical reality things. So those things will kind of take care of themselves for that person. Like, in other words, that person will eventually have an experience where they have to face, like, no, I have to take care of physical reality. Now, they might continue to convince themselves back into, a delusional kind of state or something, but that's that person's choice, right? They can either be honest about it or not. Okay, so for everybody else who's like, all right, I kind of understand that I'm not quite happy with my experience in its totality. I kind of realize that I am kind of limited by the external reality and whatever's going on in reality. That's why you care about what's happening in politics, assuming you do. That's why you care about what laws are being passed. That's why you care about your neighbor playing loud music at 2 a.m. That's why you care about the dogs barking. That's why you care about when your internet goes out and you can't play the video game or watch Netflix or something. Like, come on, let's be honest about it. You're in a reality that, yes, you're having an experience of it, but you don't control all of it, just with your wanting it to be a certain way. You have to interact with the physical reality, the external reality, and if it's not set up in a way to take care of you, like, imagine you're a child that's born and the parents are extremely abusive and they're addicted to drugs and they're just beating you all day. Like, you can't do anything about it, right? You're like a small, helpless child, right? You can't do anything about it. So everybody was a child at one point where you were a baby, and literally if everyone neglected you, you would die. So now, as an adult, to be like, no, I create my reality and I'm in total control. It's like, well, if no one took care of you in the beginning, like, you wouldn't even be able to say that and think that right now. And implicitly, we all know this. Like, if someone has a child and they don't take care of them and they say, no, everyone creates their own reality, and they let the child wither away and die, like, you would be outraged. You'd be like, that's sick. That's evil, right? So, again, I'm not talking to people who want to be delusional. If you want to be delusional and you want to participate in that, I would prefer you didn't, because I know that everybody in reality affects everything, including my reality. But I also know I can't force anybody to do anything because everyone's making choices. You can choose to be delusional, or you can choose to understand there's an external reality and it affects you. Okay. So for those who are like, yeah, okay, I get it, Cameron, I get it. There's an external reality. You don't have to remind me. It's fucking obvious. Okay. But now I want you to think about this. Consider this. We'll do an exercise, okay? So if you have something in your room that you can look at and maybe hold, right? You don't have to, but you can. So, like, I have this mug, right? I got this mug at Bass Pro Shops, right? And I really like it because it has deer on it. I like deer. I'm holding this mug. It's really in my hand. Okay, can you see it? Can you see this mug? Okay, I'm assuming if you're watching the stream and you are not blind, you can see it. Okay, now, for the purpose of the exercise, it's not good enough that you can see my mug, and it'll make sense in a moment. So I need you to have something in your room that you have. Okay, it could be anything. It could be a pencil. It could be a book. It could be a pair of headphones. It could be anything, a physical object. If you don't have anything in your room and you just have your computer or your phone, just okay, your phone. You got your phone. I'm certain you have a phone. Okay, so look at your phone for a moment. All right. So let's use the phone for example, because I'm sure you may not have a mug. Okay, so you have this phone or whatever you've got. All right. I want you to look at it, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Now, obviously, this is going to be very one-sided because literally this isn't an actual dialogue, so I'm going to pretend like I'm talking to another person here, okay? But I want you to look at this phone or whatever you have, and I want you to ask yourself, let's assume it's a phone, okay? Am I actually seeing a phone? Okay? Or if you have a mug, am I actually looking at a mug? All right? Now, before I explain anything, that might sound really weird. Why am I asking that question? Okay, but look at that thing you have, whatever it is, right? Are you actually seeing that thing? Say, well, yeah, obviously I'm seeing it. I can see it. Okay. So, assuming this is a mug, are you actually seeing the mug? For real? Are you actually seeing a real mug? And I think at this point, maybe half the people watching are like, all right, I'm turning this off. This guy is just fucking retarded. But what sounds like a very obvious question is actually a very deeply profound question. Okay? And I don't mean like in a well, it is philosophical, I suppose. I don't mean in some kind of spiritual sense profound. I mean, it's actually deeply profound because it actually matters a lot whether you're actually really seeing the mug. For all the reasons we were just talking about. Like all the anxiety that we all experience on a daily basis comes from the fact that we've never considered, am I actually really looking at a real actual mug or not? Now, before you jump to conclusions and say, oh, okay, I see where you're going. You're trying to tell me this is all a simulation, nothing's real. No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm getting at is, when you're looking at something, are you actually seeing the thing itself? Okay, enough repeating the question. Hopefully you understand the question by now. Every time I've asked somebody this, every single time I've asked somebody this, and I've asked many people this question, okay? Their immediate answer is, yes, I'm seeing a mug. I'm seeing a cup, whatever the thing is. I am seeing it, yeah. Like, as if I'm trying to trick them, like, are you really? Like, maybe it's an illusion. Like, no, I'm seeing it, okay. Yeah, you're seeing it. But you're not, okay? And when I say you're not, I mean, I recognize you're seeing this thing here. But what I'm saying is, what you're seeing, is it the actual thing? Okay, now I'm not going to pretend like I'm the only person that's ever thought about this. Okay, I'm sure you can go find some philosopher who wrote 5,000 books talking about exactly the point I'm trying to make here. But when I talk to the average person, they've never thought about it. Okay, so it doesn't really matter if you can find some philosopher who thought of it. I'm not claiming to be somebody who's come up with a new idea. I'm just saying I've noticed that most people have never considered this point. And sometimes when I talk about this with people and ask them questions, they break down in tears. Okay, and I'm not doing it to be mean. I'm not trying to make somebody cry. I'm just saying, like, I've noticed sometimes people have that reaction, and it's kind of interesting to me. Okay, so let me keep going with this point. Why am I asking you if you're really seeing this thing? Some context for a second. You know, I made a joke like, oh, I'm not saying it's a simulation. I'm not. However, if you're one of these chronically online people like me, where you're seeing what everybody's talking about, at least the people online, there's this big debate right now. do we live in a simulation? Scientists might think we live in a simulation. So and so says it's a simulation. Elon Musk says we live in a simulation. Like, people are talking about this. Back when I was a kid, basically nobody was talking about that. So it's another one of those symptoms that I've noticed. Kind of like COVID happens and like half the population is like, we don't even trust science anymore. Fuck science. Fuck scientists. They don't know what they're talking about. They're all liars. Blah, blah, blah. Like, you're like, whoa. That's not a normal thing to say. It wouldn't have been normal in the past. Like, you couldn't have found one person out of like 10,000, 100,000 who would think like that, right? Maybe like your grandpa who was like a conspiracy theorist or something. But like most people were like, what are you talking about? Science. Like, science is science. Like, yeah. Of course we should trust science. So the simulation idea, right? And I'm also addressing this because this is the Existential Crisis Hotline. And my goal here is to support the world, or literally whoever's watching or will watch in the future when it's on YouTube, to not get captured by certain ideas that are meant to disempower you. Okay, so that's really the starting point of this. Right now, if you've been watching the stream, I've talked a lot about the whole UFO conspiracy and all this disclosure stuff that's happening. And that's another one of these opportunities to capture a lot of people, because they go into like a state of confusion or hope or fear or whatever. And it's like, now you're going to be totally disempowered by whatever you're going to be told next, or whatever whoever is pushing that narrative out there. They have some reason for doing that because they want to manipulate a lot of people to disempower them so that they can have that power, right? Simple example is a politician, right? They just want your vote because now they can go and make laws. You don't get to say what laws they make at that point. All the politicians are elected. It's set now for the next 2 to 4 years. They get to make the laws. You have no say. Virtually, literally no say whatsoever. You can complain about it, and then you could say, well, I'm not voting for those people again. You vote the next people in. They don't have to do what you asked them to do or what they promised to do. They can do whatever they want. So they just want your power, because they are the ones that we all accept have the power to make the laws. You don't get to make the laws. Like, maybe at the city council level you might have some say, maybe, but the federal government, the treaties, if we're going to war or not, you don't get any say whatsoever. You've already given that power away. You just got to hope at that point that they're going to consider what you want, and they don't have to. Okay. So just like that, anybody can create a narrative. People believe it. Now you're giving some kind of power to this person, and now they can do whatever they want with that power. So my goal here is to simply support people to not get captured by those things. Okay? So I don't want you to get captured by somebody telling you that you live in a simulation and everything's an illusion. That's the starting point. But the way I'm going to do that is by helping you realize that you live in an illusion. Okay? Now that sounds pretty contradictory, but at the same time, I'm also telling you, you live in physical reality and it's real. Okay? So that sounds like a very roundabout way of trying to prove that by telling you live in an illusion. But you first have to realize the degree to which you've been deluding yourself so that you're not having any effect, any real individual purposeful effect in reality, other than going along with what other people are doing in reality while you're distracted by whatever fucking thing you think is important. Your job, your goals, your dreams, whatever they are. And then you get upset when the external reality impedes on your dreams and your goals and your desires, right? So you see the problem. You can't complain. If you give your power away, you can't complain what anyone else does with that power. You didn't want to do anything with it. You didn't want to take responsibility for it, okay? So what I'm going to share with you here is a empowering thing, okay? I don't mean empowering in the sense that you're going to be able to snap your fingers and manifest all your dreams right away. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about reality. So, back to the cup. You know, I should have used a spoon. That would have been pretty funny. Then I could say there is no spoon. Okay, but it's a cup this time. I don't have a spoon, so it's a cup. There is a cup. You're not seeing the cup. You're seeing a three-dimensional virtual reality representation of the cup. And you're like, okay. But you're saying the cup's not really there? No, it's really there. But, okay, what am I talking about? Have you ever thought about how do you actually see things? Okay, what does it mean to see something? Okay? And I think instead of me just lecturing, I'm going to show you, so you know this is not like something I'm making up. Probably what I'm going to show you, you're going to be like, well, yeah, obviously that's how it works, okay? Sometimes I talk to people and they've just really never even thought about it at all, which is okay. I mean, if you were never taught this, then you were never taught it. Or if you never considered it or wanted to go look and find out, how would you know? So let's just look at what does it mean when you see something, okay? So I just typed into Google, which has all the answers. How do you see? All right, let's see what it says. Seeing is the process of your eyes capturing light and your brain converting it into the images you perceive. Your eyes function similarly to a camera. Light bounces off objects. Okay, so I got my cup, my mug. Light from this light I have in front of me bounces off this object. It enters your eye, so it goes in my eye. It gets focused because there's like a lens there which narrows the light that's coming in into a focused point. And then it's translated into translated into electrical signals sent to the brain to be understood. That seems weird though. What does that mean? I'm understanding a cup is there? That's weird, right? What do you mean I'm so the electrical signals are sent to the brain to be understood. So the brain understands something, or am I understanding it? Think about this for a second. I actually think it's very interesting the way they phrase that. I'm going to rephrase what I was saying earlier based on this. There's a cup here in physical reality. Light's reflecting off of it. That light's going into my eye. It's processing that into electrical signals. And then I'm understanding that there's a cup there. A mug. I keep saying cup, but you get the point. I'm not seeing a cup. I'm understanding that there's a cup in my external environment. You say, what do you mean you're not seeing it? You're seeing it. Okay. But let's look at what does it mean now that I'm seeing it. Because they're saying seeing is simply the process. It's a process of. So there's a difference between a process and your experience. This process is light's bouncing off the mug, entering my eye, it's focused, it's converted somehow into electrical signals, and then I know it says the brain, but I'm understanding that there's a cup there. And yet I also experience that there's a cup there. So if you notice, the word seeing doesn't say anything about your experience. For example, if I close my eyes, is the cup still there? Obviously, like you can see it, but if you're holding this cup and I close my eyes and you close your eyes, it's still there, right? But now, there's probably lots of objects in your room, okay? And you might be familiar with all the objects, right? But if I were to close my eyes and turn around and point my eyes in the direction which they're closed of my books back here, now I haven't memorized every single book that I have, but when I open my eyes, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. There's a Benjamin Franklin biography there. Okay, I see that. In other words, if my eyes are closed, there can be an object in your reality and you wouldn't know it's there. Again, this is all really obvious stuff. I'm not saying anything very profound here. But when I open my eyes, then I see the cup. But think about this for a second. I'm seeing like a three-dimensional image here. How is it that the light is hitting this, going into my eyes, converted into electrical signals, and then my experience is that I'm perceiving or seeing or experiencing a three-dimensional image of a cup? what I'm getting at, which I kind of said it earlier, but it's a virtual reality. Okay? Now, obviously, I can't see what your reaction is to that. You might be like, well, yeah, I know, that's obvious. Okay, fine. Some people, most people, like I said, virtually every single person I talk to about this, they go, what? What do you mean? No, I'm actually seeing a cup. Well, again, if you could actually just see the cup, you wouldn't need to convert the light that's coming into your eyes into an electrical signal, because then when that electrical signal is converted, it's converted into something, and then that something is happening in your brain. There still has to be a picture of the cup that's formed that you experience. So the only way, from this perspective, since you have eyeballs, okay? Now remember when I said at the very beginning, when I'm like, it's so weird that you are seeing things from back here, whatever, in front of you. And I'm like, seems like there could be other ways of experiencing reality, not just that way. So there could be other ways that you could know that a cup is there and you don't have eyeballs. And I'm not just talking about, you can feel it, you can hear someone doing that, they can tell you. I mean, perhaps there's a way to just interact with reality where you experience it, but it doesn't require a picture to be made for you. Okay? Now, I don't know what that is. You don't know what that is. That's fine. It's just speculation. But I'm saying, yet, the way we as human beings experience reality is that information comes into our body through different methods. One is through light into our eyes. If your eyes weren't there, you wouldn't see any pictures. If you had no eyes, you wouldn't see any pictures. Or if you close your eyes, you don't see any pictures. In other words, the picture is being generated for you to see, for you to experience. And I think most people don't consider that at all. Most people will take for granted the fact that they see something, meaning they think they're having a direct experience of the thing itself, but they're not. And you say, well, but I can feel it. Okay, but how do you feel things? Let's look at that. How do you feel things? Let's see what the AI says. Feeling things, the sense of touch, happens through a complex communication network between your skin, nerves, and brain. Your skin is packed with millions of specialized microscopic sensors called receptors that detect different physical sensations. Sensing a stimulus. An object touches your skin, changing the temperature, applying pressure, or causing tissue damage. Okay, so this is the process of feeling. So first of all, something touches your skin, let's say. Specific receptors in your skin trigger based on the type of touch. So we have different types of receptors, okay, for the type of thing that's happening, a change in temperature or a pressure being applied, or even something that's a pain, like a poke or extreme heat. Okay, so that's more of a specific type of thing. But the point is, either something's touching you and it's a pressure being applied, or there's a change in temperature. And so you can detect those differently, and it depends on the type of receptor that's being activated. The activated receptor converts the physical sensation into an electrical impulse. This impulse travels rapidly up your peripheral nerves to your spinal cord. The signal travels up the spinal cord, passes through the brainstem, and enters the central sorting hub called the thalamus. The thalamus sends the signal to the somatosensory cortex, a specific strip of your brain. This area contains a map of your body, allowing you to instantly know exactly where the touch is happening. Perceiving the feel. Your brain combines this data with past memories and context, allowing you to recognize if an object is soft, sharp, freezing, or pleasant. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at here is that feeling something is really no different fundamentally than seeing something. Even though the way you the thing that you take for granted, the part that you take for granted, is that you're really feeling the cup, but that's not what's really happening. What's happening is the cup is touching your body. That's applying pressure to a certain part of your body. There's nerves there. So that turns into some kind of electrical impulse that travels throughout a nervous system to your brain, and your brain is processing that information. Then the experience you have of that sensation of the touching is an experience that your body, which really a better word for that is your mind, is generating for you to experience. So in other words, when you see something, when you feel something, hearing is the same thing fundamentally. Okay? Just for the sake of being thorough, let's just look at how do you hear something so you can see that too. How do you hear? Hearing happens, and I think actually hearing is probably the best way to get this point across that I'm moving towards here, okay? And I think maybe it'll click for you once I explain the hearing point. Hearing happens when your ears capture sound waves from the air and convert them into electrical signals for your brain to interpret. Okay, so obviously it's an AI saying this, which means this is all information that humanity already knows. Now, I'm not saying every single person knows this, but humanity as a whole collectively has discovered this information and written it down, and that's why the AI knows it, okay? So if the AI knows it, it means we know it, at least at this stage. So sound waves from the air convert them into electrical signals for your brain to hear, for your brain to interpret, rather. Your brain then translates these vibrations into recognizable sounds, like music, speech, or footsteps. Okay, so let's just go through it. Catching the waves. Sound creates vibrations in the air. And they just kind of move on from there. But really think about that for a second. What is a sound? Like somebody I was talking to, I think it was my son actually, was talking about how elephants can perceive like very deep rumbles in the earth or something like that. They can hear that, even though humans can't. So in other words, there's a vibration happening that we can't perceive, but an elephant, for probably the way it's physically structured, can perceive it, okay? So the way sound works is there's molecules in the air, and when I'm speaking, I have vocal cords that kind of like go like this, and it like pulses the air. So it's just like sending out a pulse, kind of like a wave in the water. Like you push the water and the water moves. And it's not like the molecules of water that were on my hand move all the way over to where the wave hits. It's just that they push against a molecule, which pushes against a molecule, which pushes against a molecule, and it's like that, right? It's not like the molecule here by my hand travels over there. Generally speaking, that's not what's happening. It's just that it's pushing everything. So the force that I put into the water, that force itself gets translated across molecules as they keep pushing each other, right? So the same thing happens in the air. When I'm speaking, I'm pushing the air molecules, and then they're pushing each other and so forth. And so the vibration travels through the molecules. It's not the molecules that are moving over there. It's the actual, whatever that initial impulse of vibration I created is what's traveling until it hits your ear. And we can also just call that air pressure. So it's like a pressure that's traveling, not the actual molecules themselves. The outer ear acts like a funnel to catch these sound waves and direct them down the ear canal. So the pressure is like coming and it's moving these, it's like just, I mean, I'm assuming you can imagine this, right? And it's going into the funnel of my ear down into inside my ear. The wave hits the eardrum at the end of the canal, causing this thin membrane to vibrate. So there's a thin membrane inside my ear that vibrates. it's like literally like a drum. Like, think about a drum. You have like this tight skin. Usually it's skin, maybe it's something synthetic, and you hit it with a stick, and it pushes in the little membrane very slightly. Now that makes a sound, I understand that, but that's the idea. In your ear is like a little membrane that's like a little head of a drum. These vibrations move three tiny interconnected bones in the middle ear called the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. These are the smallest bones in the human body, and they boost the sound vibrations. So on the other side, that vibrating that membrane is like connected to three little bones that makes them move. The last bone pushes against the cochlea, a fluid-filled structure in the inner ear shaped like a snail shell. The vibrations create ripples and waves in this fluid. So you have a fluid inside your ear. The air pressure wave comes, hits the membrane, moves these little bones, and they push on some kind of liquid-filled chamber. So it's like translating the air pressure into this fluid pressure, like a movement of wave through this fluid. The fluid movement bends thousands of microscopic hair cells inside the cochlea. So there's all these little hairs inside the fluid. Bending these hair cells opens up microscopic channels, creating an electrical signal. Now, what might not be clear is how does it create an electrical signal, but I don't even know if I want to go there right now. If you understand that molecules and atoms are positively and negatively charged, and if you can open up a channel that allows a bunch of positively charged molecules or ions, whatever you want to call them, particles, to flow to one other side, then those positively charged ones will push the other positively charged ones, and those will push the other positively charged ones. So you can translate this pressure wave into an electrical wave, because you're like having, like think about two magnets. You ever done that, where you take like the positive sides of magnets and like try to push them together, and you can feel them pushing back? So molecules and atoms and electrons and stuff like that all work the same way. If you take a positive molecule and you have another one, and you immediately, if you just shove that positive one next to the other one will go like that, right? Versus if it's negative and you push it over here, they'll stick together, right? Just like magnets. So that's what it means by an electrical signal. The signal means it's the translation now into chemistry or charged particles. It's not like, well, I was going to say it's not like an electrical circuit in your house or something, but it actually is like that. It's just using chemicals as the thing that translates the signal. Or sorry, when I say translate, I mean like moves the signal. So the electrical signals travel along the auditory nerve to the brain's temporal lobe. Okay, so now we've got these electrical signals flowing across some nerves up to a certain part of your brain. The brain processes these signals instantly, allowing you to recognize the pitch, volume, and meaning of the sound. So when I'm sitting here telling you initially, you're not seeing the actual cup, you're not hearing the actual sound, you're not feeling the actual cup. You understand? It's not that I'm saying the cup isn't there, but I'm saying your experience of it is something that your brain, well, it's not your brain, but your brain is involved in this, okay? I'm just going to say your body, because your whole body is involved in this. Obviously, right? If you say it's just the brain, well, how did the brain get the signals? Like, your whole body was involved in this process. So it's your body is doing this. Your body is somehow creating your experience of the sound itself. Do you understand? There's a difference between the information of the sound wave, the pressure, the movement, the electrical signal, the processing in the brain. Then you have the experience of it. It's so quick you don't notice any delay. Like if you're watching, it's like you don't notice that there's a delay between when the sound occurs. It just seems like you heard it immediately. It's so quick. But actually, here's a cool example. It doesn't quite get the point I'm making across, but like if you see lightning and then a few seconds later you hear the thunder, right? Because the sound wave had to travel over to you, right? But if it's like the lightning's like right there above you, you pretty much hear the sound right away. So it's so quick, our experience of all the information, whether it's sight, sound, touch, whatever, it's so quick that you don't notice that there's any delay whatsoever, right? So it leads to the illusion that you're actually experiencing the thing itself. But I don't know if you haven't ever considered this before, it might seem kind of weird. So if I'm over explaining it and you're already tracking what I'm saying, right? You're gonna have to forgive me because I'm trying to explain it from the perspective that somebody's hasn't considered this before. And again, in my experience, many people haven't. Okay. So it leads to that illusion that you're just directly experiencing it because it seems so instantaneous. But again, how would you know? Like, well, I saw the person turn on the phone and then I saw the light coming out of the phone immediately. Right. But even you seeing them turn it on, all of those things that you saw was happening in your experience. How do you know when the thing actually happened? You don't. There actually is a delay. There actually is a delay between, just like right now when I'm speaking and my voice is being converted through the microphone into an electrical signal to my computer. It's processed. It's sent through the internet to a server. That server is sending it through the internet to your device that you're watching it on, right? And then your computer is translating that through a speaker, and then you're hearing my voice. There's clearly a delay. It might be so quick that it doesn't seem like any delay. Now, how would you know? How do you know when I'm saying the words that I'm saying? And if you're watching it on the replay, clearly I'm not even actually saying it then, right? But that's because we stored the information. But I'm saying even right now in real time, you don't know when I'm actually saying it versus when you're experiencing it. So the same thing when you're experiencing the reality around you, if a tree falls down and then you're seeing the tree fall down, for all you know, when it's right here and you're seeing it, it's already moved from there. But by the time the light came into your eye, processed, and you saw the thing happening, in physical reality, the tree's not actually there anymore. And in fact, this is a well-known thing in like astronomy, right? When you're looking at the sun, which I don't recommend to stare directly into it, but obviously you can look at it for a moment, and everyone's done this, or you can see it out of your peripheral. When you observe the sun in the sky, let's see, how far away is the sun? So according to science, the sun is about 93 million miles away. How long does the sun's light take to get to Earth? 8 minutes and 20 seconds. So am I looking at the sun in the past? Yes, you are looking at the sun as it existed about 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago. That should really make you wonder. Especially if someone's having difficulty accepting what I'm saying. And I'm not certain if I've even made the point fully clear yet. But again, just to make it clear, I'm saying you're experiencing a virtual reality. You're not experiencing the thing actually directly. Okay. What you're seeing is not the actual cup. It's a representation of it. Okay? Doesn't mean it's not there. The fact that you're experiencing a representation of it is because it's there. Okay? Does that mean everything you perceive is real? No. That's why hallucinations exist. It's not why they exist, but the fact that hallucinations exist, right? Something can go wrong in this process and produce an image that looks real in your experience, but it's not actually there. And you could confirm that with other people. Now I know they might be lying or this or that or whatever, but let's just assume everyone's acting in good faith, right? You're acting in good faith. Two people are honestly reporting about their experience. There's 100 people in a room. They're all looking at the same spot on the ground. And one person says, I see a pink mouse. And everyone's like, there's no pink mouse there. They're looking very carefully. They're looking. It's like, where is it? And you get really close and you point. I'm pointing at it right now. And everyone's like, there's nothing there. Okay, so assuming everyone's honestly reporting what they're perceiving and experiencing. Now, maybe the other people can't see it. This is a challenge, right? Because if it is a fact that whatever you perceive is in fact real, then that would imply all hallucinations are real. But we know they're not. Okay, at least we accept that they're not, right? We accept that they're not real. So, if you accept that hallucinations can be false, but you can experience a hallucination, then that should make you question whether you're actually seeing anything actually in fact or not. The fact that you can perceive a hallucination means that your body is somehow able to produce pictures for you to look at. And all I'm suggesting is that that's what you're experiencing right now, actually. When you're seeing anything, it's actually a hallucination that your body is producing for you to experience. And again, just to be clear, that doesn't mean that the thing isn't really there, right? The hallucination is more like a breakdown in your body giving you, like, getting confused, let's say, and producing a false picture, okay? So the picture is in fact an illusion, but whether the illusion is based on something real or not is the question, okay? Meaning whether it's a hallucination or it's a hallucination that, like a false hallucination, or whether it's a hallucination that has a physical reference where that information is coming from, okay? And to go back to the sun example, the fact that when you look at the sun, you're seeing the sun in the past proves my point. It proves what I'm saying, that you're experiencing a virtual reality. Because how can you see the sun in the past? It's not in the past. Like, it's there actually right now. And it may even have moved slightly. Probably not much relative to you because it's so big and so far away. From the perspective of where it's at versus the sun you're seeing versus where it's actually at now may not really be that much of a difference in terms of being able to perceive it. But the fact that you can see the sun so far away and it takes 8 minutes for the light to get there, and then the picture you see is 8 minutes old, what does that tell you about everything you see? It's all old. You're not seeing the thing itself right now. Because the thing is there, like, this cup hasn't moved. Okay, I mean, I know I've been picking it up and putting it down, but right now, it's sitting there. But even when I'm experiencing it, I'm experiencing a picture, which means it's old. But the cup's still there. So when I see it in this moment, that next split fraction of a second, I'm seeing it as it was when I was perceiving it the first time, if that makes sense, right? Like, I'm perceiving cup A, but the moment I'm perceiving cup A is already cup B. It's a new version of it. It's not really a new thing, right? But the light is old, right? The light already hit the cup and already went into my eye. The cup is still there, but the light I'm seeing is a version of the cup. I mean, it doesn't seem obvious when it's just sitting still, but if the cup is turning, right? When I'm seeing the cup with the handle in a certain position, by the time I'm seeing it, the handle is not actually there in that moment anymore where I'm seeing it at. It's actually already moved, assuming it's moving very, consistently, right? So the experience of something, there's a term for this. I don't know if this is the correct term or not, so let me just double check. What is qualia? I think it's probably capturing what I'm thinking here. But not quite. I think there's a little bit of nuance here, but let's just look at it. Qualia is the philosophical term for the subjective, internal, and individual components of our sensory experiences. So it seems based on that definition, it is what I'm talking about, but I feel like the examples they give, they make it seem like it's something different. Okay, and I'll explain why I mean by that. It refers to what it is like to experience something firsthand, which cannot be fully described by physical facts alone. Doesn't quite get it, but let's see. While science can explain the mechanics of how... I guess so. While science can explain the mechanics of how your eyes capture light, or how your skin feels pressure, like we've been talking about, qualia is the actual personal feeling of those experiences. So they're using the word feeling more broadly. In other words, We tend to associate the word feeling with literally, when you're touching something, like you're feeling it, but you don't think of when you're seeing something as you're feeling it. But the experience of seeing something is another type of feeling. So there's what we call feeling, touch. Hearing is a type of feeling. It's feeling sound, okay? But it's not feeling the actual sound. It's an experience that your mind, well, let's say your mind's doing it, it's your body doing it. Your body is producing a feeling of the sound. That's what we call sound, okay? And the problem in terms of communicating this is that we use the word sound for two different things. So if I said, did you hear that sound? There's the experience, and then there's the actual sound itself. But the actual sound itself was just air molecules moving. There's no sound to it. Does that make sense? There's no sound to a sound. The whole question, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Yes and no. Yes, it physically vibrates the air molecules, right? Because when the tree hits the ground, okay, it impacts the ground, that shakes the ground, it shakes the air molecules around it, and those air molecules vibrate. But does anyone experience that vibration as a sound in their experience? If there's no one there, then no, they don't. In the same sense about the elephants, so apparently these elephants can feel vibrations in the ground and they can hear them. I mean, that's at least what scientists say. I don't know how they know that they're experiencing it like a sound. Maybe but they're sensing it somehow and they're reacting to that sensation. So we would assume that their body is somehow producing some kind of internal experience for them, assuming that animals have an internal experience. But let's just assume they do. If they do, what is internal experience? It's the feeling of something, right? It's the feeling of the sound, which means that experience you have of hearing it, right? Like, if you could perceive the air molecules, like let's say I was playing some music out loud. If you could somehow just see the air molecules vibrating, would that be satisfying to you? Like maybe it might look cool, but would it be the same as experiencing the sound? Like the again, what's the fucking word for it? See, the problem is this. Key examples of qualia. Sight. Well, when they say sight, what do they mean? Do they mean they don't? If you're talking about qualia, they don't mean the physical process of the light bouncing or reflecting off of the surface, going into your eyes, being processed. That's not what they're referring to in the context of qualia. They're talking about the experience of seeing something. But what's the word for it? Let me see if the AI knows. What is the... Okay. Is there a word for the experience of seeing something versus the mechanical process of sight? See, but they don't have a word for it. There's a general word, which is what perception is, right? So really we're talking about perception versus sensation. It's really all we're talking about. But I think for most people, we would assume that perception means receiving the information also. But according to this, see, no, actually, I take that back, because that wasn't what I assumed. I was like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Sensation, I don't know, let's look at it. What's the difference? Perception versus sensation. Sensation is the physical and neurological process of your sensory organs gathering data. It includes photons hitting your retina, electrical signals traveling down the optic nerve, and your brain receiving raw input. Perception, the experience. This is the mental process of organizing, interpreting, and consciously experiencing that raw data. Okay. I got thrown off when I saw this word process down here. So, oh no, this is what threw me off. This sentence right here. Perception is how your brain translates the mechanical signal into a meaningful image. like recognizing a familiar face or noticing the beauty of a sunset. It's a weird statement because perception is how your brain does it, which makes it seem like it's referring to an explanation of the process, but I don't think that really is what they mean by how. Let me see how can I explain that. It's kind of subtle, like the word how. Okay, it's a weird example, but the best I can come up with is actually, it's a joke. I remember this joke my uncle told one time, and I didn't get it when I was a kid at first. I didn't understand it at all. And we were at Golden Corral. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's like a buffet place, all you can eat buffet, and they got all kinds of food: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, steak, ham, broccoli, bread. I don't know. They got all the things. And you go to the buffet, you pick out what you want, you sit back down, you eat it, and you come back if you want more. So I remember we were eating at Golden Corral when I was a kid, and my uncle was there, and sat down at my table, and he goes, he goes, it's so funny. I was getting a baked potato or something. I don't know. Maybe he already had a baked potato, and maybe the waitress saw that he had one. I don't know, because it seems like a weird question for her to ask while he's standing at the buffet. But bear with me. Okay, so this is what he said. Yeah, the woman asked how I found the baked potato, and I said I lifted up this cover, and there was a baked potato there, and I was like, okay. And he's like laughing, and I'm like, why is that funny? I didn't get it, right? But it illustrates what it's saying here. How did you find the baked potato? That could mean how did you do it? Like, what was the process that was involved? Versus like, how was it? And you're like, oh, it was very tasty. I enjoyed it, right? So when this says perception is Perception is how your brain translates the mechanical signal. Do they mean the process of how it's done, or do they mean how you experience it? But it doesn't answer the question of how. Like, well, how does that happen? How does that work? Perception is how your brain translates the mechanical signal. Does that make sense what I'm saying? It's not saying it's how it does it. It's saying perception is the experience of how your brain has translated these signals. It's translated the signals. That's sensation. I don't know. It's kind of difficult because when it talks about sensation, it kind of seems to stop at your brain receives the raw input. So are they saying the raw input is received and then some process happens on there? Okay, actually, maybe this is what it's saying. There's some obvious processing going on with that information. The light comes into your eye, it's electrical signals, which becomes like goes into your nerves, to your brainstem. It's raw data, like literally. The cup no longer exists. The cup could be smashed into existence for all you know in a split billionth of a second. It's not there anymore, right? The sun winked out of existence. An asteroid hit it and blew it up and it's gone, or like ran out of fuel. I don't know. The sun's not there anymore. You're not going to know for about 8 minutes. So when you're standing there looking at the sun, okay, you could be standing there, sitting there watching it for 8 minutes straight, and then suddenly it just winks out of existence. And you think it just happened. It didn't. It happened 8 minutes ago. The moment you see the sun wink out of existence, that happened 8 minutes ago. Okay, so in that 8 minutes, right, the light is coming in, or after 8 minutes, the light comes in, it goes through this process in your brain, and then how does your brain process it? Well, we don't know, but whatever that processing is occurring, you experience it as a picture. Okay, I think that's what it's implying. Now, I don't know, is there a step between the processing of the information by your brain, the raw data, it's doing some processing, and then it produces an experience? Or is the experience you're having your way of experiencing the processing. Like your experience and the processing itself are one and the same. I think that's probably what it is. And I think that's what this is suggesting, right? Now, I'm not going to claim to know the answer to that specific point. Actually, see, it's not that. They're not one and the same because the brain is doing a process. Whether you experience it or not, the raw data comes in. It has to be processed, okay? So on top of that, there's an experience. That's kind of seems obvious, right? You can't just say it's an experience. Well, but is it being processed? Like, is it going into a cell in the brain and the brain's then doing something there? Now, how does that become an experience? Well, we'll find out. Does anyone know? But what I want to just throw in here right now is that total experience that you have, okay, that is your mind. Okay? It may seem like I'm saying something. It may seem like I'm not saying something, depending on what you understand the word mind to mean. But I think most people, when I talk to them, assume that your mind means like your thoughts and feelings, but feelings in a very limited definition of the word. Meaning like, when you feel happy, when you feel sad, when you feel excited, when you feel anxious, those are like feelings, and some of them can be like emotions. I guess maybe they're like more like emotions, I suppose. But we kind of tend to equate the two, like, you hurt my feelings. What the fuck does that mean, you hurt my feelings? It just means I had a bad feeling inside. So I went into an emotion of sadness. There's a difference, right? Let's see what if I don't want to throw this conversation off track. What is the difference between feelings and emotions? Let's see if psychology has an answer for this. Emotions are physical, subconscious reactions in the body, while feelings are the conscious mental interpretations of those reactions. Okay. So emotions. These are instinctual chemical reactions triggered by the brain in response to a stimulus. They alter your heart rate, release hormones, and change your facial expressions or body posture. Feelings. These occur after your brain notices the physical emotional response. Your brain labels that bodily change based on your personal memories, beliefs, and past experiences. Feelings are highly personal and can last much longer than the initial rush of an emotion. Doesn't it seem like emotions are like the cup? It's really there, it's really happening. But my experience of the cup, that visual picture that I'm seeing, that's my experience of the cup. So you have an emotion, which is it's like a chemical process that occurs, and then you have the experience of that, which feels like something, and that's a feeling. That's why it's called feeling. But isn't it weird? Because when I say I feel this cup versus I felt sad, don't we assume those mean two different things? Like, really think about it for a second, okay? When someone says, I felt sad, versus someone says, I felt a cup. I want you to imagine for a moment, if you can, when someone says, I feel sad, okay? We know what that means, right? When someone says, I feel a cup, it's the same thing. You're feeling the cup in the same way that you're feeling an emotion. The feeling itself is the same thing. It just has a different... There's a certain difference, but it's more like the way we define it is the difference. It's not because there actually is a difference, right? Similar to when I see something versus I hear something, we're like, those are two different things. But in reality, they're just both feelings, right? When you feel something, you're not actually interacting with the thing itself. It's an experience that your mind is generating. I keep going back and forth between saying your body generates it, your mind generates it. Your body generates it, but that generation, that experience, is your mind. Like the experience, the feeling, is your mind. That's what your mind is. Your mind is a three-dimensional. Now, when I say it's three-dimensional, I don't mean it's literally three-dimensional. I mean the way you experience it. It looks like a three-dimensional thing. And also, the feelings you have and the experiences of seeing and the experiences of hearing, all of those things all combined together, and maybe there's some things I'm leaving out, but all of that, the sum totality of all of that, is your mind. Like, your mind is the virtual reality, right? Like, if you put on the virtual reality headset and the headphones, you're like, I'm in a virtual reality. Okay. So when you see something, that's a part of the virtual reality. What's it being created by? It's the contents of the virtual reality. When you hear a sound, like somebody's walking in front of you and you hear the footsteps, there's nothing, that's not really happening. Okay. But you experience it, and that sound that you experience is a part of the virtual reality. Now, it's a weird analogy because for you to experience a virtual reality, you have to experience it in your virtual reality. So it's a virtual reality, if that makes sense, right? Because even a virtual reality, a real literal one, a real virtual reality, even an fuck, how do I say it without saying word virtual? The virtual reality, as we normally think about it, right, like in a computer or something with a headset, is just a picture being displayed on something. It's a display. But you have to perceive it, which means the display has to produce light, which has to go into your eyes and do that whole process. And then your mind is the projection of the experience of the virtual reality, if that makes sense. Hopefully it should make sense. It just seems so weird to be like, the only way you can experience a virtual reality is if you're already in a virtual reality. So you're experiencing a virtual reality inside a virtual reality. The only way you can experience a cup is in a virtual reality. Explain to me, how else can you experience it? Whatever answer you come up with, that's your mind. That's the virtual reality that you're in. There's no other way to look at it. There's no other way. But I think this distinction between emotions and feelings is really cool. It really ties it all together, actually, right? A real world example, the emotion fear. Okay, sorry. Imagine you're walking down a dark street, and a shadow jumps out at you. How's that possible? The emotion fear. Your brain instantly triggers the fight or flight response. Your heart races, your muscles tense, and adrenaline floods your system. This is an automated biological event. And you're saying, no, it's because I saw the shadow. Did you? Or did your body sense it and then your mind generates? Again, I know I keep going back and forth. When I say your mind generates it, it's really not accurate because your body is generating your mind, right? Just like going back to the virtual reality headset example, the virtual reality is like all the pictures happening on the display, but what's making those pictures happen is the physical hardware of the headset and like the LEDs or LCD screen or whatever it is that's changing the pixels of light to certain colors and brightness and so forth. So the hardware itself is producing the thing. So that's why I'm trying to be careful to say your mind doesn't create the image that you experience. Your mind is the experience of the image. That's what your mind is. Your body is the thing that's creating the mind. Your body is the thing that's projecting the mind. So instead of saying your body is projecting the virtual reality experience you're having, I'm saying your body is projecting the mind. The mind equals this total experience you're having in every possible way. There's not one single thing you experience that isn't your mind. And again, just to be really clear, that's not like I'm saying everything you experience is coming from well, I am saying that. A dog barks. In reality, the sound waves hit your ear. You hear now, you experience the sound of it. The experience itself is your mind, and that's coming from your body. Now, where did your body get this information from to decide somehow to project that experience for you? Well, it was from the sound wave hitting your body, okay? So when I'm saying your mind is creating everything you experience, that doesn't mean there's no external reality there that it's referring to. It just means when you, at the level at which you experience, it's got nothing. It's now one step removed from the physical reality itself. Okay, and when you really sit with that, what does that imply? Doesn't that imply you can't experience physical reality directly? But then also, what does it even mean to experience it directly? Do we know any other way? Is there such a thing? Maybe you should think about that. Consider it. Is there a way? Is there any way I could experience reality without an experience? What does that mean? Now, consider this though. The only reason that seems like a conundrum is because what do you think you are? What do you accept fundamentally that you are? And you say, I'm my experience. What are you talking about? Right. So to an experience, to a thing that only exists as experience, when I say you'll never experience reality directly, you're like, well, I mean, I am experiencing it directly. No, you're not. You're an experience. You're not reality. You're a second-hand interpretation of reality. So you might want to be careful if you're saying, well, I mean, I am my experience. What else am I? Okay, what are you saying? You're saying you're not real. That's what you're saying. You're saying, I'm not real. I'm just an experience. I am experience. Okay, what's your point? Well, is there anything about you? Now, let's assume for a moment, possibly there's something more to you than just your experience. Now, you may not be able to conceive of what that is because it just can't imagine it right now. Okay, fine. But let's just assume for a moment somehow there's something more to you than just your experience itself. Okay? What could that be? Well, like we said, you can't experience reality directly because you can only experience experience. So what does it mean to experience reality directly? The only way for you to know about reality is to have an experience of it, to have a feeling of it. Okay, but again, that feeling is not the thing itself because it's an experience. And I hope I've demonstrated sufficiently that that experience is not the thing itself. It's a second hand, it's an interpretation of it. It's something your brain is doing. They say it's your brain. I think it's more than just your brain. I mean, how can you say it's your brain? You discount your nerves and all this other stuff. So I think really if scientists are honest, which I'm sure sometimes they are, they would say, well, we don't actually really know what your brain's doing. And it might not even be your brain. We're not really sure. We just assume it is because if you turn your brain off, you die, or something like that, right? Like you can't have an experience if your brain's missing, but you can have an experience technically if you don't have a heart, as long as you replace it with something else. You can have an experience if you don't have a foot. You can't have an experience of a foot. Well, maybe you can. You can have you can have a hallucination of it, but you can't have an experience of an actual foot that's not there. So if we start taking away parts of your body, at a certain point, if you have no, if we just take away the brain, like you can't have any experience. So somehow the brain must be fundamental to it. And that's true. It seems to be true. But at the same time, could you have an experience if you didn't have any nerves? Maybe. Maybe you couldn't have an experience of anything referring to reality, but maybe you could still have some kind of hallucinatory experience if you just have a brain. Okay, so maybe your brain is super fundamental to your ability to have an experience. So let's just assume it is. But that doesn't mean that that's what's in itself generating the experience. It might just be a really integral component of it. So I don't know. Let's leave that aside for a moment. It's really irrelevant. But regardless of that, you can't have an experience without having an experience. You can't experience something without being an experience. But is there anything about you that does interact and therefore, from a certain perspective, experience, I'm using the word loosely, reality directly? Now, again, it's hard to say that word experience because it implies the feeling part. It implies the experiential part. But when a tree's in the forest, when a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, does it make a mechanical vibration pressure wave of air molecules? Obviously. I mean, maybe not. Well, okay. Then you just think nothing is real. So I'm not going to assume nothing's real. That's retarded. There's a tree. It exists. It falls down. If you say nothing's real, then you can't even ask the question. What tree? Like, you might as well just not even ask the question. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, it doesn't make a sound. It's like, well, there's no one there to experience it, so the tree doesn't exist. I'm like, well, then what tree are you talking about, right? So we know trees exist because I can go to the forest, I can see the tree, I can come back, it's still there. Does that mean it physically exists, or is it a super stable simulation? At that point, it doesn't really matter because it's stable, okay? So whether you call it a simulation or not, it's not being generated just randomly, okay? That's a different philosophical question for the moment. If we assume there's an external reality, which again, if you're being honest about your actual experience in your life, there's clearly something that's stable. And then there's also a component that's like fantasy-based, illusion-based, which is like kind of like a subcomponent of your mind called your, you can call it your secret mind. It's like this not component, what's the word I'm looking for? Compartment within your mind where you like think about shit and you imagine things and you fantasize about things and you look at a certain person and you're like, ooh, I'd like to sleep with them, and like, oh, I hope no one finds out, shit like that, right? And it's like we kind of tend to think that that's our mind. I'm like, that's like a small piece of your mind. Everything you experience is your mind. Okay, I think I've belabored the point. But is there any part of you, assuming you could be something more than just your mind, something more than just the experience that you have, which is your mind, right? Is there anything else? Well, there's your physical body, right? You have a physical body. And that's the thing that's directly interacting with external reality because it's in external reality. Seems obvious, right? I mean, really look at this for a second. What does that imply about you or me if we accept that we are only just our mind? And you might say, well, I know I'm not just my mind. I mean, I know I'm also my body. Like, that's why I care about being fit or eating right or whatever, right? But if you're honest with yourself and you really look really carefully, I think maybe you might find some little part of truth of what I'm going to say, which is you really only care about your body to the degree that you get a certain experience from it. Right? Like, why do you want to be fit? Is it because it's best for your body, actually? Or is it because you want to look good? Or is it because you want to feel good? Is it because you want to be able to do certain things and therefore have a certain experience? Like, I have always wanted to experience climbing a mountain and I have to be fit to do that. Or, when I go into a party, I want everyone to admire me, right? Or maybe I want to be able to attract a certain type of person, to have a certain experience of that person, maybe sex or maybe a relationship or just a friendship or whatever, right? So then you like have certain judgments, like, oh, I'm too fat or I'm too skinny or this or that, where it's like a thinking process, and then you feel a certain way about yourself, like I feel ashamed or I feel undisciplined because I don't want to go to the gym or whatever the thing is. Like you have all these thoughts and judgments that come in. But again, that's like all of that stuff is happening in a very small sub process, a compartment within your total mind, right? But I really think there's something to this point that we as human beings, so I'm not going to say you, I'm not saying like only you do this, I'm saying we as human beings, what I'm saying applies to every fucking human being on earth. We have separated ourselves into two things. There's our mind and there's our body. And even though they're clearly connected, because your mind is just the experience of the processes going on in your body. Like the sensory input comes in, your body starts to process that, and at some point that becomes an experience somehow. Like that's a good question, right? How does your body generate this virtual, this 3D holographic? It's like maybe I shouldn't use the word holographic too quickly, but how does it generate this three-dimensional experience that you're having with all the sights and sounds and feelings and tastes and touch and all that stuff, and then all the thoughts as well, and then all the other kind of feeling type things, like with your emotions, right? You're feeling emotions also, but that's just a process happening in your body. When you feel happy, that's the experience of a certain chemical process going on in your body. Isn't that crazy? When you really consider it, like, what the fuck? We're just the experiencers of certain processes happening in physical reality. But now, I guess the real question is, are we discounting something, or are we separating ourselves from something? Like okay, here's another way of looking at it. Are you just your experience? And I was trying to demonstrate that, the fact that I think most people, if not all, even though they might say, no, I mean, I'm also my body or something, I think if you did this for yourself, or if any person did this for themselves, and they really examined in total honesty with themselves, do you ever put experience above a consideration of your physical body, right? Like how many people are on these GLP-1s, right? I mean, I can't prove it, and I'm not trying to make some kind of medical claims or anything, but my intuition, let's say, is that they're not good for your body. I don't think they are. I can't prove that. I don't know that, but it just seems like they're not good. Like, I think taking heroin every day is not good. Now, that's something that can be demonstrated, right? So can I demonstrate that GLP-1s are actually bad for your body? I don't have the evidence. So that's what I'm saying. Is this an intuition at this point, right? But I've seen some things and observed some things where I'm like, something seems off there. Okay, but let's just use heroin as an example. We all know it's fucking bad for you. Like, it's not good for you. It has physical effects on your body, which then affect your mental, like the mind experiential part. Maybe not right away. At first, the experience is amazing. I've never done heroin, but I'm assuming from what people say that it's an amazing experience. Or I don't know what the quality of it is. Maybe it's not like a bliss. That's what like ecstasy would be, right? When people take ecstasy, they say like, it's a blissful feeling, right? Okay, but then there's always like a come down. And if you take ecstasy like every day, I don't know, what are the long-term effects of daily use of MDMA? I don't know what it's going to say. Oh, let me turn on my thing. Why didn't you just tell me an answer? I ain't reading all that. Can you summarize the consensus? Come on. medical opinion on this. Isn't AI amazing? It's so amazing, guys. Maybe we should put it in charge of everything. Daily chronic use of MDA poses a high risk of severe neurotoxicity, profound mood disturbances, and lasting cognitive defects. Axon damage. Chronic exposure damages the delicate nerve fibers of serotonin-producing neurons. Transporter reduction. Heavy users experience a measurable reduction in serotonin transporter density across multiple regions of the brain. That might be a problem, considering it's a neurotransmitter. Or not that that is the neurotransmitter, but it's involved in the process of neurotransmitters. Loss of natural regulation. Over time, the brain loses its native capacity to properly regulate serotonin, dopamine, and GABA systems. Persistent depression and anxiety. Isn't that ironic? You have too much bliss and then you become persistently depressed. Because the brain's emotional anchor, serotonin, is constantly depleted, users frequently develop clinical depression, generalized anxiety, and panic disorders that persist long after the substance wears off. Emotional instability correlates heavy use with heightened impulsivity, hostility, paranoia, and sleep disorders. And then in rare cases, they can go into like a severe psychosis. Verbal and visual memory loss, executive dysfunction problems, accelerated brain aging, physical and systemic toll, dangerous stresses on the heart, organ toxicity, dental issues from involuntary jaw clenching. Is that why they always suck on pacifiers? Okay, I think I proved my point. It can be a fun, positive experience at one point, but then if you try to do that all the time, it can lead to problems. So maybe if you did it once, you're kind of okay. It's not too much damage, or twice or three times. But if you do it every day, clearly there's clearly a limit somewhere between 0 and infinity of, this really can start to hurt you, right? So I would have to assume that at some level it hurts you even when you do it once, but maybe the long-term effects aren't a big deal that you might not notice somehow. But how would you notice it? How do you determine whether you notice it? Isn't all that based on your experience? Right? Like, it's affecting your experience. So how often do we put our experience of something over the physical reality itself, which would be the body? Like, think about it. The body itself is in physical reality, but your experience is not in physical reality. That's why I'm saying the word virtual. It's like, think about it. No one else can perceive your experience. I can see your body. I can see you there. Of course, I know I'm experiencing it, but at the same time, no one can see your experience. At least not in their experience. No one can have an experience of your experience. What does that tell you? It's not in physical reality. It's actually an illusion. Isn't that weird? Think about it. What do we start with? Are you really seeing a cup? When people start thinking about that, they go, well, I don't know, I can experience the cup, but how do I know the cup's really there? So they start to think that the physical reality is an illusion. Okay? I think this is kind of what Buddhists think, or something. Pretty sure. At some level. I don't know. I don't want to make claims about Buddhism. I'd have to investigate more. But now we've come to a total 180 where we realize, wait, the physical reality is not the illusion. By definition, my experience is an illusion. Holy shit. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm not real? Maybe I'm not real. Well, hold on. What does it mean? Like, to be real? What's going to be here forever? at least what can we assume is going to be here forever? Is your experience going to be here forever? Well, obviously not. So then it's not real. Is the physical reality going to be here forever? You say, well, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Well, in some form or fashion, why would it ever go? Like, why would it ever go away in some form, in some sense? Why would it ever go away? It's here. Even if I don't experience it, it's still here. It's what's feeding my experience in the first place, right? It's the thing I have to interact with to have an experience. Now, some people, they try to just meditate and have a pure inner experience, right? But you have to question that, because what's producing your experience right now? Isn't it your body? So even when you go on this mystical journey inside of yourself, isn't it your body that's producing that? Like, isn't your physical body producing that experience for you somehow? And yet we think, and this is where you get into like spirituality and like a lot of new age kind of stuff, and other areas I'm sure too, but I'm just going to use spirituality as an example, where it's like the only thing that is real fundamentally is consciousness. Consciousness is what's real. But what does consciousness mean? Let's investigate. Oh, I'm clicking on my OBS. That's not going to work. Talk about virtual reality. I can see my screen on the OBS program, but I have the actual monitor here. I'm over here trying to click on the false one. Okay. What is consciousness? Consciousness is your subjective awareness of your own existence, your internal thoughts, and the surrounding environment. It's your awareness of the environment. Now, I'm just going to go with this definition of consciousness, although I disagree. There's some nuance that I disagree with, but who am I to argue with an AI, right? Okay, so I'm just going to work with this. Phenomenal consciousness, experience, access consciousness, processing. Okay? So phenomenal consciousness is the raw, subjective feeling of being alive. The actual experience of seeing the color red, feeling a sharp pain, or hearing a musical note. Access consciousness, or processing. This is the functional cognitive side of your mind. It includes the information your brain actively manipulates to make decisions, recall memories, speak, and direct your attention. And this is why I had the sort of disagreement with the word subjective awareness. Because the problem is consciousness is a loaded term. You've got two layers to it, according to this anyways. You have the cognitive side. It's the part where your brain actively, the information your brain actively manipulates to make decisions, recall memories, speak, direct your attention. So I would kind of separate things into awareness being a thing in itself, and then consciousness being another layer. And it would primarily be, it's kind of a weird distinction to make, but it's like we went from external reality to the experience of reality. But I would say there's obviously layers behind the scenes of what's making these things appear in your experience, right? You say, well, the cup is making it appear. No, it's not. Your body's making it appear in your awareness. Your body's just using data from outside, but it's processing that. And somehow your body is creating the display, okay? It's like your computer has or your phone, whatever you're on, has a display on it. And something inside your device is deciding which pixels to turn what color. And then there's the actual display itself, okay? But so your mind is the display, and within that beneath that is the processing that's going on. And that was the thing. See, that was the thing that it missed when I was looking at this other part where I said, where is it? Remember when we got to this part where it said, okay, sensation versus perception. And it says perception is how your brain translates the mechanical signal into a meaningful image. But we were like, or I was like, well, when they say it's how it does it, do they mean perception is the process by which your brain translates it into an image? Or do they mean perception is the experience that your brain is creating for you? Those are two different things, because how does it make the image, right? Like, there's the image on my computer, on my display, but then there's the how it got there. So on the one hand, you could say, well, what you're seeing on the display is how your computer is displaying information. But you could also say, well, how is it displaying it though? And you can say, well, there's circuits and there's, literal wires connected to each pixel, and it sends a pulse that changes the color of, I don't know how a modern computer display works, so I'm just going to pretend like it's all a bunch of little tiny LEDs, which I doubt it is, but it's probably something to that effect, right? It's changing the color of the LED or something, whatever the pixel is. It might be interesting to learn about what actually is doing that. I mean, I understand how LEDs work. I just don't know what's behind the computer screen. So there's the how it displays the information in terms of the mechanical process required to change the pixels, but then there's the actual display itself as a totality, which is the how it's displaying the information. So there's information on your computer and it's being displayed. So the display is how the information is presented. But then how is it actually being displayed in the first place? So you see, those are two different questions. They're kind of subtle, but it's using the word how differently. So they didn't explain how you go from your brain receiving raw input to the experience itself. And I was saying, well, maybe they mean perception is just both. But if you go down here, they're saying there's two layers to consciousness in the context of what it's saying here. Okay, there's more layers of consciousness because we have your conscious, your subconscious, your unconscious, like we know about this in psychology and so forth, right? But for the purpose of this, they're saying there's two layers in another context, right? So you have the phenomenal layer, which is your actual experience of stuff, and they have the access consciousness, where it's like accessing information to be displayed. Okay? But again, they're not really explaining how it goes from here to here. How does it go from here to here? Like on the computer, how does a computer display work? I'll show you what I'm trying to get at. Computer screens work by painting millions of tiny colored dots called pixels in the grid. The computer tells the screen exactly which colors to display, and the screen rapidly refreshes this image. Okay, so every individual pixel, so it's like a tiny little light, and there's a bunch of them on your screen, all in like a grid. And they're so small, you can't really see them. Maybe you can, I don't know, I don't think I can. So there's different ones, there's different ways of doing this, but let's look at OLEDs. Okay, they actually use LEDs. Organic LEDs. I did not know that's what OLED means. Organic. Huh. Interesting. This is a newer premium technology. An OLED screen, in an OLED screen there is no backlight. Instead, every single pixel is its own microscopic bulb light made of carbon-based compounds that glow when electricity hits them. That actually helps me understand it very quickly, right? So there's little tiny light bulbs and there's wires connecting each light bulb, and the computer is processing which light bulb gets power and probably how much power. That might determine what color it produces, right? There may be some way of varying it, and depending on the amount, there may be some other technicality to it. LCDs, which I would assume is what my computer uses. I have like a M1 MacBook. This is the most common. At the back of the screen is a bright light source, usually LEDs. So there are LEDs in the back, and in front of that is a layer of liquid crystals sandwiched between polarized glass. When the monitor applies a tiny electric charge to a crystal, it twists or it untwists. This acts like a microscopic shutter. Holy shit, dude. This is blowing my mind way more than anything I said earlier, personally. Either letting the backlight pass through or blocking it completely. The light then passes through red, green, and blue color filters to create the final image. That is insane. Makes you wonder if there's something similar going on in your body. All right, let's do it. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit further here. I don't think we're gonna find the answer though, and I know because I've already studied this stuff. This is where I started when I was in college, just going, why do I see something from behind, like this, like seeing something? And I was like, and then I had this other experience, which I'll tell real briefly, which was, you know, I was reflecting on all the things that happened in my life, all the good things, the bad things, mostly the bad things. And I was like creating this little story that I would always come back to, and I would edit and I would add things in, and then I would be like, oh, now I understand. And then I would come back and edit it again. And like, I was like doing it. I don't know where I was doing this in some subspace of my mind. And at one point I just go, wait, what the fuck am I doing? I'm telling myself a story. I'm writing a story in my mind about my life, and I'm defining myself. I'm both defining myself according to this story, and I'm deriving meaning about myself from the story, but the meaning is depending on how I'm writing the story in the first place. Like, what the fuck is going on here, right? And it didn't really bother me so much as I was just like, huh, that's weird. Why am I doing that? No one told me to do it. No one ever said to you, oh, remember to keep writing your story in your mind today. Remember to add some stuff to it, right? I think a lot of people journal, and I was just journaling in my mind, okay? Maybe a lot of people do this. I don't know. I haven't really talked. I mean, I don't think I've ever really asked anybody very directly. Maybe a few, and I'm sure some people have said, yeah, I know what you're talking about, right? But anyway, so it was those 2 points combined where I'm like, why am I doing that? And then I can't really tell you how I got from that to the next part. See how I'm like telling you a story? The story is here, right? It's still there. But now I'm just looking at it, right? Okay, what do I remember happening? And so I don't remember how I went from that to being curious about consciousness specifically. Somehow I made the connection of that's consciousness. And then I wanted to know, what is consciousness? I want to know more about that. And that's when I started studying it. It was like a hobby basically, okay? Because I was studying mathematics in university, and I wasn't learning anything about consciousness, but I was, as a side hobby of my own, I was curious about what the fuck is consciousness. So I started studying stuff, and that's why I'm saying I've read all this stuff before, like the hard problem, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it doesn't seem like they've advanced very much over the past, I guess, 20 years now. The neuroscientific view. So the easy problems of consciousness are mapping brain waves, tracking neural firings, identifying sleep versus awake. The hard problems, why do we have an inner life? Remember that question? Why am I experiencing things like this? Why are you experiencing things like that? How does matter create mind? This is a question we're asking. How does this occur? Like mind. Remember, the whole thing, right? And like I said, this is not something I made up. This is what philosophy and science, they're backing me up in what I'm saying, right? Just maybe some people have never considered it before. Why aren't we biological robots? That's random. Why did they put that there? Is that an actual question they ask? Why aren't we? I would ask, why are we? That seems like we are. It seems like we are. Unless you think robot means there's no inner life. But that would be an assumption that robots can't have an inner life, or that having an inner life means we're not a robot. So, are we robots? I mean, the same scientific worldview would also argue there's no free will. Or is there? He doesn't know. Scientists view consciousness as a product of complex brain networks. Yeah, that explains the access consciousness part. By tracking electrical impulses and blood flow, they can identify neural correlates of consciousness, the specific brain states that fire when you become aware of a sound or a visual image. So it's a correspondence. Like, I'm aware of the sound. Oh yeah, when you said that, we saw like a certain part of your brain, there was like electrical activity going on. Okay. Philosophers point out that even if we map every single neuron, science can still cannot explain the hard problem of consciousness. This is the question of why and how physical matter, like brain tissue and electrical signals, creates a rich, subjective inner life. Prominent theories of how it works. This theory compares the mind to a theater. Unconscious processes happen backstage. Information only becomes conscious when it's brought to the center of the stage, the global workspace, broadcasting it to the rest of the brain. That doesn't explain shit. Saying it's like a theater doesn't explain anything. No, but how does it go from just a physical process to an experience? See, the computer example is easier to understand because the computer's not having an experience of itself as far as you know. It's just there's light being displayed because of this physical process. That's fine. It can shoot out light based on processing information because it's connected to electrical components, and those things make the light shine. Okay, that's not hard to understand. But that's different with us because they don't even know how the body's making the light shine for us inside of our experience. Right? Because you might say, well, but there's no light happening inside your experience. The light's happening outside your experience. Close your eyes then. Did the lights turn off in the room? No, they didn't. And yet you can't see it because the light's not going in your eyes. The light's still shining on your body though. So it's because your brain's not processing it. So when you experience the light, that's because your brain started showing you that picture. And when you look at a painting, for example, they have white here and black here, and the white looks like light and the black looks like darkness. So your mind is literally a picture that looks like light. It is light. I'm just saying it looks like that. So just saying it's a theater doesn't tell you anything. This mathematical theory suggests consciousness is an intrinsic property of any system that possesses a high level of interconnected, integrated information. According to this view, consciousness is a spectrum, and anything with enough complexity might experience it to some degree. That still doesn't explain anything. It doesn't explain. But how mechanically does it do it? And even if science could explain that, okay, well, we figured it out. It's a liquid crystal display, just like similar to a computer, but more advanced. And your brain modulates the crystal, and that's what produces different colors. Like, even if you figured out some explanation of it, you would still have to ask, sure, but how is it that I experience it? How is it that I'm aware of it? So then the question is your experience just a phenomenon? Like, the awareness part of it, is that just a phenomenon? I must say I would argue, but I can't really argue it. I would just suggest intuitively that there is no explanation for that outside of you are the awareness. That's what you are. Like, the contents of your awareness can be explained by your body producing certain images and so forth, and like putting that contents there, but the awareness of it part can't be explained. I don't think it's even possible to be explained. I don't know. I don't think so. Because when I say it's not possible to be explained, I mean in the context of science. Because science is subject to the fact that you can only observe things and you can only draw conclusions. Like you can't be the thing directly. Like if you were the thing, you would know how you work. But the fact that you can't figure it out and science can't figure it out, it shows science itself is actually just the mind trying to understand something through the mind. Meaning, every scientist that exists is having an experience. So are they interacting with reality directly? No. They're experiencing reality indirectly just like you or me. So science is a function of a person, a being which is experiencing reality with a mind, so indirectly with a mind, and then trying to use the mind as a way to get information about reality and how things work. But it's not directly in physical reality. You're directly in the experience as your mind. So there's like a fundamental disconnect. I'm not suggesting that the mind is fundamentally separate in some way, but we don't know as human beings how to interact with physical reality directly and experience it directly. We can only do it as a mind experience. So then we're limited to whatever limitations there are. If you just think about the physical logical structure of, you've got a physical reality and you have a mind experience, and the only way to know things about reality is to experience things as the mind secondhand, I would assume there are some fundamental limitations with what you can know about physical reality and what you can understand about it, because you're not it. You're something else. You're an experience. So how can you ever know it really, fully? You're limited as your mind. And yet, your mind comes from your body. So what's going on there? And I guess the real question to look at, which maybe I'll leave it on a cliffhanger for once. The real question to look at is there any way that I could be not just my mind and experience, but I could be the physical reality itself? And does that mean I would have to not experience things? Or is there a way I can experience but also at the same time be the physical reality? And I mean I am the physical reality right now. Look, I can move my arms around, see? Okay, so maybe it's not something that I can't already do. Maybe there's something going on where I'm limiting myself somehow from fully being that physical reality, because I'm thinking that I'm just the mind, if that makes sense. Like, maybe I'm already the physical reality. But again, if you go self-honestly within yourself, how much of the time do you spend considering the physical reality, actually, versus considering it only to the degree that it produces an experience that you want, right? And I think the last thing I'll share on this point, or offer as a consideration, is maybe there's something to what I'm sharing here. Maybe, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, all that anxiety, all that weird shit that we experience, remember, that we experience, has something to do with the fact that maybe at some level we're neglecting the actual physical reality that we're dependent upon, that without which we couldn't have an experience. Now, you could pretend like you can have an experience without physical reality, but prove it to yourself. You can't, because the only way you could do that is to go somewhere where there is no physical reality, just as your mind. But if you're honest, like, where does your mind come from? It comes from your physical body. Look at all the stuff we just studied. You're not just a mind appearing out of nowhere, noticing there's a physical body. It's a projection from your physical body, in the same sense that the picture on the computer screen is a projection from the physical device itself. The physical device is making that projection. So I'm suggesting that your body is making the projection, which we call our mind, which includes all those things we talked about. But imagine or consider that we've become so enamored with the experience itself that we've forgotten or we're neglecting the physical part. And there may be things going on in the physical part that we're not aware of anymore because we're only knowing about it from our experience. And I mean, for example, is there a child suffering from severe malnutrition right now? I'm sure you could look it up. I'm sure there's a way you could verify, yes, there is. Or you could assume, yeah, obviously, right? Is it possible that that could in any way have any effect in physical reality, that in some way can come back and affect your physical body and therefore affect your experience of yourself as your mind? Maybe not just that one child. What if there's 1 million of them or 1 billion of them? Or what if there's entire civilizations or cultures or countries or ethnicities or just groups of people that are constantly experiencing a lot of bad shit because of the way our physical reality is structured? They might get angry one day, or they might be resentful, and they might notice that you have something that they wish they had, and then they might try to take it from you or try to hurt you or hurt people you love or whatever. So I'm sure at some level you can imagine at some scale things going on in the external physical reality could have an impact on you. And like, that's why I started out with this point earlier tonight, which is that's why we all experience bad shit, because we're not directing the whole physical reality. But okay, I guess I have to make this point before we go. Your physical body is not separate in any way whatsoever from all the other physical reality around us. If you study quantum mechanics as one example, right? I have this book by Werner Heisenberg, which I'm working through. It's a pretty interesting book. But he was one of the guys who was in there developing the theory of quantum mechanics. And I'm not saying all of this rests on just the theory of quantum mechanics, just as an example, right? They're like, matter can be seen as waves and particles, either or, and it's kind of both, and they're kind of complementary ways of looking at it. So is there any separation if everything is waves? Is there actually any separation between anything? If literally a particle is a wave? So it can be like a particle, but it can also be like a wave. A wave meaning like, I don't even know how to explain it unless you already have the context, but a wave isn't necessarily a physical thing. It's just energy itself. It's like, it's just potential. It's movement. It's motion, right? It's potentiality. So what I'm getting at is, if you were to start thinking kind of seriously about what are all the implications that we do understand from just science, it seems to lean towards the idea that nothing in reality is physically separate from anything else. It's all one thing that has different forms, but even those forms themselves can change, right? Like, if you take a piece of fruit and you throw it in the ground, it'll rot, and those atoms and stuff will become part of the earth and the dirt, and then those will be taken up as nutrients into another plant. So like, even though the peach seems separate, it's not. It reintegrates into everything else. And then even if you look at the atomic level, there's really no separation between one atom and another atom. They're more like descriptions of a standing waveform, essentially. And so again, most of the separation that we perceive or that we think exists is because the only way we currently know reality is through an experience of it. So everything that I think I know about reality is from a secondhand experience. And if my experience presents to me, this looks separate from that, so therefore they're separate. But that's like, is this even how this thing fucking looks? In reality? What does it even mean for it to look like something in reality? Because looking like something is an experience of it. Do I really even actually understand how this thing physically exists? Really understand it. My understanding of it is purely an experience based on information that my body is producing. And then the question is, wait a second, hold on. I understand my computer can produce this image because it has a program running on it. And if it didn't have any programs running on it, it couldn't produce that image. So how's my body producing an image for me to look at and experience? That would imply at some level there's programs like in a computer. Like there has to be some kind of something like programs that can produce images of things like cups. Because clearly this picture doesn't exist inside of me as a picture any more than the picture on the screen. Like you can open up your computer like, oh look, there's a picture of Cameron right there. No, there's not going to be any picture whatsoever. You're just going to see a bunch of electronic circuits and gates that are either like this or like this. Like there's, and other stuff too, but there's not going to be any like pictures of me in there. It's programs. It's physical matter that's organized in specific patterns. That's what a program is. And then you see something unfold predictably if you know what you're doing, when you're programming it, but you have to program the matter to be able to produce a certain result. So if I'm seeing this cup in a certain way, I'm experiencing a certain way, something must have determined that I see it that way. Okay? And, hopefully I'm seeing it as it actually is. But if I go a few steps higher than that, when I look at the world and I see poverty and I'm like, well, that's just the way the world is. That's what my mind is saying. But my mind is not understanding reality directly. And there could have been certain things that were programmed into me to think like that about it. And how do I know I'm thinking about it correctly? Because again, if I'm just trusting my mind as what it's saying to me and what it's showing and explaining and giving meaning to, but I know for a fact that my mind is only like a second-hand interpretation of reality, then why should I just blanket trust that? That doesn't mean I should like mistrust everything necessarily. I mean, I can test, like, is this cup here? Okay, well, I can drink. And okay, and now my body is not dehydrated later. Like, clearly something was able to put water into my body. Like, it seems like that was real, right? So I don't have to sit here and go like, nothing is real, like, and go crazy. But I should start questioning, like, the way I've defined everything in reality, I don't remember ever doing any of that. I don't ever remember sitting down going, this means that, and that means that, and this means that, and the conclusion between these things is this. And I'm like, well, I kind of remember my mom telling me, Cammy, this is a cup. What is it? And I'm like, cup. And she's like, good job. Okay, so someone told me this was a cup. Who the fuck told me why there's poverty? I don't remember. Maybe my mom? Oh yeah, honey, there's poverty because some people are just lazy and that's the way it is. I'm like, okay. So maybe that's why I think poverty exists, because people are lazy. Maybe my mom never said anything about it and I learned about it some other way. Maybe from a book, or maybe I never even thought about it. Maybe I just have watched so many movies where people are in poverty and then the hero is always like really rich or something. So I'm like, well, poor people are just fucking losers, I guess. Like I have some definition about it that I never questioned. So what I'm getting at is that our mind is presenting a picture and our mind is presenting meaning to us. And did we ever take the responsibility to go back very carefully and say, where is this information coming from? I mean, I'm living this life. I'm living this experience. I'm not totally satisfied with it, so something could be improved, but what is causing this experience to even come about? Okay, maybe you'll never figure out those mechanical details in this lifetime, or I don't know, ever, but you do know that physical reality has some kind of effect on you. So maybe the first place to start is not necessarily, I have to know the secrets of how my body displays information in my mind. Maybe you can just realize, like, that's what's happening. Somehow it's displaying information. Okay, that means something's going on here. And I can't just assume everything my mind presents to me is what it is. Might be a hallucination. Okay, I can test. Is this a hallucination? No, it seems pretty consistent and stable. Okay, so that's probably not a hallucination. Okay. Everybody's out to get me. Everybody hates me. Maybe that's a hallucination. I don't know. Why do I think that? And then if I look very carefully, maybe there's some program running in the background saying, you're not good enough. No one will ever like you. And then I'm like, holy fuck, my mom used to always say that to me. I mean, my mom didn't. I'm just saying, maybe your mom did. No one will ever like you. Everyone is going to hate you. Everyone hates you. Or maybe she was just saying, everyone hates me. And then, like, you're a little baby hearing that all the time. And then there's just programs inside of you going, everyone hates me. And you're like, everyone hates me. That's just your mind having the experience of the words, everyone hates me. And you're like, yeah, but everyone hates me. It's like, well, maybe that's the experience you're having because you have this program running that tells you everyone hates you, and then it's interpreting everything as that experience. I'm just throwing some ideas out there. But, like, okay, what I'm getting at is that perhaps there's a level of responsibility towards physical reality that we're not really taking because we're so infatuated and enamored and obsessed with just what we're experiencing only. And we might be sacrificing something in the process. And what I found investigating religions, spiritual paths, philosophies, etc., is there's almost nothing out there that's like, the answer is not going to be found purely in your experience only. It's not going to be found purely in your mind. It's going to be found when you start realizing there's a physical reality that you're actually, for lack of a better word, abusing to have an experience. Like, what if you realized, in terms of what you're accepting right now, I'm not saying fundamentally this is who you are or what you are, but the way human beings operate without realizing it, without being aware of it perhaps. Maybe they're aware at some level, but I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give us the benefit of the doubt. I don't want you to think I'm not a human being. I know I'm a human being. Us, okay, what we're doing is we just want an experience. And at a certain level, whatever we have to fucking do to our body or with other people's bodies or to other people's bodies, whatever we have to do to get the experience, we'll do it. And of course you might say, well, but some people are good people. It's like most people just, yeah, I'm not going to say there's no good people, okay, who like treat other people with kindness and so forth, okay? However, then you have to look at the entire system that runs our world, which is a highly competitive system that does not give a fuck about any of us. Whether we live or die, it does not care. It only just wants to keep going because it's purely just like a literal program, like a machine program. There's no life in it. There's no inner awareness, nothing. There's no life there. And you are subject to it. Like, if you don't have money, you're fucked. Period. Right? You say, well, I'll go live in the woods or something. Like, okay, have fun. Like, all right, if you really want to do that. But what if you have no money and no education? Education meaning you don't even know how to chop wood. It's like, imagine somebody's like, well, I know how to chop wood and build things. And I'm like, yeah, you have this education about how to do certain things because you were born into a system where you could access that information and learn that stuff. But imagine you didn't have that. Imagine it was just you with no knowledge, nothing, in a physical reality where you don't know how anything works and you got to survive. Like, you're so screwed. And that's how many people live, but there's some kind of a structure there that they can fit into and scrounge and like be a prostitute or sell drugs or do crime or whatever just to survive. And that's all they've got. And we think, you know, especially if you live in a situation where you're not having to do that, you're thinking, oh, well, I don't have to do that. But maybe that might have an effect in terms of your experience at some point. Maybe it won't have an effect on your experience right now or in this lifetime. what if at some point you no longer have this mind, and at some point, just hypothetically, you actually have to, like, let's say at some point you realize you are this physical reality, which is all interconnected, all one. And then in that experience of this physical reality, you see the child being beaten to death. And then in that moment, that is you. Like, you are it. You're not like separate from it. Because remember, if you're separate from it, that's like an individualized experience you're having. That's not there anymore. You're the thing itself. You're the whole thing. And you're like, I'm being beaten. And then you're also the one doing the beating. And you're like beating yourself. And you're being beaten by yourself. And you're like, what the fuck is happening here? What is happening to me? What is happening to me? Like, whether you care or not, that is the experience that's happening to some bodies in the reality, in our reality. And whether you care about it or not, that is what the physical reality is experiencing. The very thing you depend on to have this wonderful experience that you maybe are having. And you're like, I don't care about it. I don't care what it happens to it. It can't even experience anything. Well, maybe not in the way you experience, but like, would you want to be that? Would you want to be the sum total entire of all reality with all the war, suffering, poverty, abuse, drug abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, all the things that are happening in our world, all the negative stuff? So yes, but all the positives as well. No, all the positives are only happening in people's experiences. They're not happening in the physical reality. There's no positive experiences happening in the physical reality. There's just all the physical stuff happening. And if you looked at that, if you had to be that, would you want there to be any negative whatsoever? Like, you're your body. Do you want, well, it doesn't really matter. There's a severe pain in my foot. Who cares? That's just my foot. I don't care about that. Like, well, when it happens in your experience, you're like, I got to solve this problem. Now I care about my foot. But when it's not feeling bad, you're like, you don't care. It's not in your experience. This is the fundamental problem that we as human beings have not faced. And I'm saying this is like kindergarten level shit. This is really basic shit. Really basic shit. And I'm not pretending to be above it. I'm just saying, like, I'm aware of it. That's all. I'm just aware of it. And like, if enough people became aware of it, if everybody became aware of it, hypothetically, if everyone became aware of it, if you became aware of the suffering of physical reality itself, you say, well, there's some parts that aren't suffering. Sure, I understand that. Perhaps. You don't know. Like, is that even real? Because if one part's suffering and it's all one and it's all interconnected and there's no individualized experience to protect it from the experience of something somewhere else like you're having right now, you don't have to experience the suffering of another person's body because you're just your mind that's from this body. But this body physically feels what's going on in reality at all times. It's physically interconnected as it. It is one with it. So this oneness everybody's looking for is a mind fuck. It's in the mind. It's an experience. They don't want the oneness of reality. Nobody wants that. Why? Because you fucking know what's really going on in reality and you don't want none of that. And this has been happening since time began. And so all we've tried to do this whole time was try to separate ourselves more and more and more into an experience to get away from that. But we depend on it and we are the ones abusing it to get the experience. Thinking we can get away with that forever. The worst case scenario is we abuse the physical so much to get this, because then you have to ask this question, okay? What is allowing the experience to happen that you're experiencing? Like, if it's a computer display, it's pretty obvious. It has to be plugged into the wall, right? It has to be plugged into the wall. There has to be electricity running. Why would your body work any differently? Why would this mind experience that is basically everything you know not work on some principle that it requires some kind of energy to produce it? And where the fuck is that coming from? Other than your physical body. And you say, well, that's just how things are. Right. That's just how things are. But had you ever really considered it before? Before I said anything? No. So you can't just say, well, that's just how things are. You're only just now finding out. So to say that's just how things are, you never really thought about it before. So if you were a child being abused and someone says that's just how things are, would you be like, oh, okay, cool? No, you'd be like, well, what the fuck? Why is it that way? Why does it have to be? Why? We only ask why when we're suffering. We don't ask why when everything's okay. That just shows how fucked up human nature is. And I'm not trying to go on some religious bullshit of like human nature is so corrupt and evil because we turned away from God. The only God we've turned away from is physical reality itself, the thing that we're using to be here to experience. And the last thing I'll say, this is probably the last thing I'll say, is that, you know what, if you really consider it, the physical reality that exists, that allows us to experience ourselves as a mind, is probably so fucking insanely interesting and complex. Yeah, there's the suffering bit, but like we could just stop doing that stuff. I mean, we could just stop beating each other up, doing war, poverty, debt, all that. Like if we stop doing all that shit and not abusing the physical reality, like maybe it'd be a little bit less crazy. Okay. But I'm saying, what is science interested in? It's trying to figure out what is physical reality. It's atoms and it's this and it's that and it's so complex and interesting and how do things form together? Like, but we're stuck in our mind trying to figure it out. But I'm just saying, we want all this experience and we're looking and we're searching for something and we're never satisfied. And that should be an indication to us we're going in the wrong direction. Because shouldn't we want to figure out what's actually here physically and like understand it? How does that happen? And look, I'm not trying to create a anxiety in anyone of like, well, I'm stuck in my mind. What do I do? I'm so screwed. It's like, no, like, look, we don't know how to experience ourselves other than the mind, okay? All I'm suggesting is, what if we started considering, can we actually figure out what's going on in physical reality? Maybe there's something interesting there. Maybe there's something there because that's what's allowing us to exist. People say God created everything and God is the ground of all being. No, he's not. The physical reality is the ground of all being, because being is an experience. I mean, there's existence and then there's being, existing, experiencing. You as the mind experience only exist because the body is projecting this three-dimensional thing. You as that experience only exist. Now you as maybe more than that, as the body itself, as physical reality, well, if you're that, then you exist. You exist. But who would be willing to forego the positive, all that shit experience in here to actually go find out what's happening in reality? And I wonder if anybody needs my help. I wonder if any part of reality is suffering while I entertain myself in like some sort of mind experience thing. And it might seem like you can get away with it forever, who cares? But like at some point you're gonna die. We all know this. It's a fact. And then you have out there in the external reality that we're not taking any responsibility for, we've got all these tech billionaires creating all this technology to try and live forever in a computer or something. They're building something. No one knows what the fuck they're building. I have some ideas. People have ideas, but no one really knows. Like, why are you building all that out there? There's a lot of reasoning behind it. But we're just allowing it to happen. Right? And I'm not saying you go out there with a pitchfork today. I'm just saying, because that's not going to do anything. I would say the first step is like, okay, where am I literally just only existing as an experience, and that's all I care about? That would be a starting point, just to start thinking about that. Like, the next time you walk by the trash can and you see it's full and you ignore it because you're like, I don't feel like taking it out. Oh, I don't want that experience of taking it out. Like, why am I so subject to what kind of experience I have? If I don't take it out, my wife or my kids have to take it out. And they have to at least be the one to be like, okay, I'll take it out, I'll do it. Like, what if I was just like, you know what? I'm more than just my experience. I'm physical reality. I'm this body. Does this body give a shit if it has to take out the trash right now? No. Only the mind experience, in contrast of, well, I could have a different experience right now. I don't want that experience, right? Well, you know who doesn't get a choice? The child being raped doesn't get a choice. They don't get to go, no, I don't want that experience. No, I'm having a different one. Which is what the law of attraction fuckers try to tell you. Well, they chose to have that experience somehow. Like, bullshit. You wouldn't choose it? Well, yes, because I am an enlightened being and I have gone beyond the need for suffering. Like, give me a fucking break, dude. And yet not being honest about the fact that they're still subject to their body. Like, you're only having an experience because you have a body and you didn't create it as that experience. This is the problem. People can't understand that they didn't create all of this. The physical reality we live in somehow molded itself together into what we see today, to the point where we have experiences as some kind of weird three-dimensional projections. And we can't see that we had any part of it because we think we're just the experience thing. But if you realize you're also the physical part, then you're like, oh, fuck, I've been here the whole time. So we got to really start thinking, considering, like, there's more to who I am than just this experience thing that I'm experiencing. There's more to it than that. And yet, as far as I can tell, I'm kind of trapped in this. Is there a way I can, while I'm trapped in this, get back somehow to considering that other part of me that I've lost touch with somehow? And that will be the subject of my streams moving forward at some point. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow, I really want to talk about the Catholic Pope's encyclical about artificial intelligence. I was going to talk about it tonight, but I changed my mind because I was either going to talk about this or I was going to talk about that, and I just need to do some more research because I haven't finished reading it, and I really want to have something of substance for you guys and not just be like, well, let's just read it together. Like, you could do that on your own. I want to, like, understand what they're really getting. Because there's something going on here with that encyclical. I feel like it's some kind of warning shot. And things are about to get a little spicy, I think, between the people who want the AI and total control and the corporations and then the church and the other people who are anti-AI, the doomers. Like, I feel like there's something going on there. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm going to do some more investigations in that. And then I think that's probably what I'll talk about tomorrow night. So have a good night, y'all. And if you enjoyed the stream, tell a friend about it. Encourage a friend to come on. And I'll see you next time. All right, everybody. Good night.